some minds seem to hum with a quiet electricity. You've probably seen it before, the person in the meeting who spots the flaw in a plan no one else noticed, the friend who can connect two completely unrelated topics and turn them into something insightful, or the colleague who stays calm when everything around them feels like it's falling apart. They're not necessarily the loudest voice in the room, nor the one flaunting their degrees or achievements, but there's something about the way they think, the way they process life, that makes you lean in and wonder, how do they do that? It's tempting to believe they were simply born that way, gifted with some elusive form of mental brilliance the rest of us can only admire from a distance. But the truth is far more interesting and much more attainable. Highly intelligent people don't just rely on what they know, they cultivate how they think. And that cultivation doesn't happen in bursts of inspiration or grand life-changing resolutions. It happens in the quiet repetition of certain daily habits. Over time, these habits shape the mind the way exercise shapes the body, slowly, consistently, and permanently. There are 3 habits in particular that seem to appear again and again when you study the lives of people who think at the highest level. Each one plays a unique role, and when combined, they form a kind of mental ecosystem, one that allows ideas to grow, connections to form, and decisions to improve. But before we get to all 3, let's start with the one that acts like a spark. The first is deliberate curiosity. Now, this isn't the fleeting, "oh, that's interesting" kind of curiosity you feel when a random fact floats across your feed. This is the kind that turns over a thought in your mind like a pebble in your hand, noticing every detail, refusing to set it down until you've really looked at it from every angle. Highly intelligent people treat curiosity like a daily workout for the brain. It's not just something they indulge in when they have spare time, it's woven into their routine. What makes their curiosity different is its range. They don't limit themselves to topics that are directly related to their jobs, their hobbies, or even their personal goals. Instead, they cast their net wide, exploring ideas, disciplines, and stories that, on the surface, seem completely unrelated to each other. A software developer might spend an afternoon reading about Renaissance art. A doctor might be fascinated by the physics of black holes. A musician might study the psychology of persuasion. To an outside observer, this can look random, but there's a hidden method to it. By collecting knowledge from different fields, they create a rich mental landscape where surprising connections can happen. The real magic of curiosity is in those connections. When you're familiar with multiple perspectives, your brain has more material to work with when solving problems. You might recognize a pattern from biology that applies to economics, or a principle from storytelling that helps in leadership. These moments feel like sudden flashes of insight, but they're really the product of a mind that has been stocking its shelves with a variety of raw materials, day after day. And curiosity doesn't just broaden knowledge, it sharpens thinking. Every time you chase a question, you're practicing the art of investigation. You're teaching yourself how to ask better questions, how to spot assumptions, how to follow threads of logic to their end. Over time, this becomes second nature. Intelligent people aren't just curious because they want to know more. They're curious because it keeps their minds alive. Of course, gathering knowledge is only the first step. If curiosity is the spark, then reflection is the slow, steady flame. Reflection is the second daily habit that intelligent people tend to nurture almost instinctively. It's not as flashy as learning something new or as instantly gratifying as finding an answer, but it's where much of the real growth happens. Reflection is the pause after the experience, the moment you stop moving long enough to ask, what just happened here? What can I take from it? This can happen in many forms. Some people write about their day in a journal, others take quiet walks. Some let their minds wander in the shower or during a commute. What matters isn't the method, but the willingness to stop and think, to sift through the noise of daily life, and pull out the moments worth keeping. When intelligent people reflect, they're not just replaying events, they're examining them, turning them over in their minds to see them from different angles. If they read an article that challenges their beliefs, they don't dismiss it immediately. They sit with it. They ask themselves whether the challenge has merit. If they make a mistake, they don't just shrug it off and move on. They try to understand why it happened and how to prevent it next time. This habit creates a kind of mental accountability, a commitment to learn from experience rather than letting it slip away. Over time, reflection turns scattered knowledge into a coherent framework. It's the difference between having a pile of puzzle pieces and actually putting the picture together. Without reflection, curiosity can lead to a cluttered mind, interesting but disorganized. With it, each new piece of information finds its place, linking up with what's already there, strengthening the bigger picture. And there's another benefit, one that's easy to overlook. Reflection creates space between stimulus and response. In other words, it gives you time to think before reacting. This is why highly intelligent people often appear calm under pressure. They've trained themselves to pause, to run situations through their internal filter before making a move. That pause, even if it's just a few seconds, can make the difference between a rash decision and a wise one. Now, with curiosity feeding the mind and reflection organizing it, you might think the cycle is complete. And for many people, this is where they stop. They learn, they think, they analyze, and then they go back to life as usual. But for the truly intelligent, there's one more step. It's the step that separates theory from practice, potential from progress. This final habit is the one that pulls everything together. Without it, the first two are like wind and water with no vessel to hold them. It's the habit that turns knowledge into skill, ideas into results, and insight into impact. And the reason I've saved it for last is because it's often the hardest to develop. It requires not just thought, but courage. It's the habit of intentional application. Intentional application means taking what you've learned from your curiosity, from your reflections, and deliberately using it in the real world. Not someday, not when you feel ready, every day. It's about closing the gap between knowing and doing. If you learn about a new communication strategy, you try it in your next conversation. If you reflect on a mistake you made last week, you adjust your approach the very next time you're in a similar situation. The point isn't to be perfect, it's to put the idea into motion so you can see what works, what doesn't, and what needs refining. This is where growth accelerates, because reality has a way of giving you feedback that theory never can. You might read a dozen articles on negotiation, but you won't truly understand the principles until you've sat across from someone and tested them. You might reflect on the importance of active listening, but until you consciously apply it in a tense discussion, you won't feel the shift it creates. Every time you apply something new, you're not only improving the skill itself, you're also training your mind to adapt faster, to bridge the gap between insight and action. And here's the part most people miss. Intentional application doesn't have to be a grand gesture. In fact, the smaller the step, the better. The goal is consistency, not drama. Intelligent people know that trying a little bit every day beats making one big effort and then forgetting about it. Over time, these small, deliberate actions add up to profound change. When you put all three habits together, they form a loop. Curiosity brings in new information. Reflection makes sense of it. Application tests it in reality. The results feed back into curiosity, which sparks more learning. And the cycle continues, each round building on the last each day, sharpening the mind just a little more.